Hey babes, and welcome to Gore&Gossip. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Jordan, and this is your weekly deep dive into all things terrifying true crime cases, cold blooded killers, and the occasional creepy conspiracy.
Plus, haunted dolls, cursed mirrors, and that one time your aunt swore her house was built on a portal to the underworld.
If it's bloody, bizarre, or just plain bone chilling, we're talking about it.
And yes, we're bringing the gossip too, because what's a murder without a little side eye?
So lock the doors, light a candle,
and let's get into it. Okay, so I don't think today's topic needs the usual intro that I do, because there's so much lore, gossip, literature, shows, movies, you name it, about it that just the word itself is an intro. Hopefully this will get us started for spooky season, because when this comes out, it'll be right before as we're getting into in September. And honestly, this is truly to feed my own obsession as well. Today, we're talking vampires.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I love vampires.
Can't see my shelf right here. That's 90% vampires. There's only a couple witches books in there, and those witches books have vampires in them.
I love that.
Just one shelf. And that's not even all of them, because I'm missing more than half of the House of Night series, which I will mention again later, don't worry.
Yes.
But when you hear the word vampire, who or what do you think about first?
For me, it is definitely Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I forced myself to rewatch that. Obsessed with that. Twilight, all of the usuals, and of course, Vampire Diaries.
My first thought is always Vampire Diaries. I was too young for Buffy, and I actually have never watched it, and I know I'm gonna get so much crap for that, because I know I need to, and I see clips of it sometimes on TikTok and stuff, and it does look good, and it is something I know I would enjoy. I don't know, it's one of those things where you know something's good and you probably would enjoy it, but you just can't bring yourself to watch it. That's this Buffy for me. And True Blood too. I really want to watch True Blood, but I just can't, I don't know, I just haven't brought myself to be able to do it.
It's kind of a big task too, because there's so many seasons. I know for Buffy there's so many seasons. True Blood, there's 8? So it's a big task to do it. You have to be dedicated.
Yeah. And so really funny, I'm not a big rewatcher of shows or movies. I'll if a movie's on and it's something that I I'll watch it, but I won't willingly go put it on usually. And Twilight, I will willingly, and Harry Potter, I will willingly go rewatch those movies. But and obviously Twilight, if you're a ratty, you know. If those are to a very specific group of people, if you know, you know. And I really hope somebody is watching this, because that's going to be a reference that people are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But now I lost my train of thought what I was going to say. Oh, Vampire Diaries is the only show, well, that and the originals are the only two shows, I count them as one because it's the same universe, that I have ever rewatched. I've never rewatched Grey's Anatomy, which I stopped watching. I've never rewatched literally any of my other favorite shows. Vampire Diaries and the originals is the only one for me.
I love Vampire Diaries so much. I wanted to be Elena so bad.
And I have the book, so that's part of my shelf up there. And I've said this before, but it's so true. I feel still that the books feel like a fever dream. I don't know how else to explain it other than they are literally a fever dream, because there's the way everything happens in the books is completely different. Julie Plec took that show in a completely different direction. If you guys remember the first episode when Damon comes in and he transforms into a raven and stuff, that's never mentioned in the show again outside of that episode. Never mentioned again. It's never mentioned again. And it's like a thing in the books. Like he just does that in the books. Like it's not like a big part of the plot, but like it happens. And like that sticks through. No, Julie Plec does it like once for the main show, like episode, the first episode, and then that's it. She doesn't do it again.
She's just like
So
one and
crazy.
done. You can only
Yeah.
be a raven once and
Yeah.
then never again.
Exactly. I was like, I don't know, that was crazy. But like that's not like we obviously know like those are like the most popular of our time, but there's also like Dracula, Carmilla, which I'm gonna talk about later. I'm gonna get more into like the iconic like vampire fictions over the years, but we've romanticized vampires and this ideal of immortality that might come with it for so long. But what is the true lore behind all these bloodsuckers and heartthrobs? Where did the idea of vampires really come from? Let's start at the beginning for that. Long before Edward Cullen sparkled, or we had to choose between Damon or Stefan Salvatore, real quick, who? Team who? Damon or Stefan?
Damon.
Damon. Were you also? I throw this in here too now. Were you an Edward or Jacob fan?
I was a huge Jacob fan.
I was too. As an adult, I'm Team Edward.
You have to
Full.
be Team Edward because I didn't realize that Jacob was like 14
Yeah.
or like younger
Well, so
than
he
Bella.
was like a year younger than Bella. He was only
Yeah.
like 16, so he was a year younger. So that didn't really like make that much of a difference for me. Um, but I was like obsessed with him in like the books before I even watched the movies, like, and then the movies, and of course like huge Taylor Lautner fan at the time.
Huge. Yeah.
Still am, still love him, he's still great. And like I'm Team Rob Pattinson like all the way through, and like love him so much. But as a kid I was Team Jacob, and now as an adult I've come to my senses and I am Team Edwards. Hardcore.
As you should, especially considering that they put him through so much.
Oh god.
Um, it's so much so that he actually hates the series now,
Yeah.
which is hilarious.
Yeah, most of them do, which makes it even funnier. I think that's like any big like cult, like pop, like cult fiction or whatever they're called, is like when it becomes to like that degree, most of them end up like the actors end up hating it because like it's all they're known for, and it's like shoved down their throats because of fans like so much. Like, and there's like Supernatural and all of them, like they do like
Yeah.
panels all the time, and I'm like, how do you guys do that? Like, how do you like not tired of this? Like I get it, like it made you and you definitely appreciate that, but it's like I feel bad for them at some point.
Yes, I'm exactly there with you. Especially the Supernatural guys,
Oh
because they
gosh.
grew up on that show, and like Jared
I actually
Padalecki.
didn't watch that until like recently,
Really?
and I never finished it, and I regret not finishing it. So I think I'm gonna go back and like see where I figure out where I like left off and finish it because it was really good.
Come and talk to me after you finish it because I have
Yeah.
feelings on the final episode.
Okay, I'll definitely come talk to you about it. It's funny because this guy that I used to work with, he watched it and he like convinced me that he was like, I know this is something that you would like. Like him and I were like real cool. We were best friends. And he was like, I know that this is something that you're really gonna like. You really need to watch it. So I was like, okay, I'll finally do it. And then I did. And I was like, yeah, you were right. I do like it a lot. And then
You're
I never
right.
finished it. I fell off for like a hot minute. And now like life happened. But anyway.
Anyways, get on the train track.
Yeah. This is good. We're going to go derail a lot, I promise you, in this episode. Ancient legends of creatures who drank blood and drained life showed up in multiple cultures across the world. These creatures weren't exactly vampires back then, but their characteristics are similar to what we would now refer to as a vampire. We're going to go back all the way to ancient Mesopotamia. And like, if you guys know, Mesopotamia is like pinnacle of like ancient society, and they actually had a their own myths and legends. Oh, okay. I forgot to write down my writings on this, so bear with me while I say these names. I'm so sorry. Lamashtu was a terrifying demoness who preyed on infants and pregnant women. That's one of them that they had in their mythology. Her mythology overlaps with Lilitu. Lilitu, I think is how you say it. It's the Jewish. It's adapted to the Jewish legends of Lilith, um, who was believed to seduce men and drink their blood. I didn't get too much into that one because I have more and I could spend all day talking about ancient legends. And I do spend a little bit of time here. So bear with me if you guys are like, oh my God, why is she talking about ancient legends so much? I have multiple, I promise. So I didn't get too much into that one. But there's a lot of lore on that one too. Ancient Greece had Empusa, Lamia, and Strix. Strix. I think it's Strix. Yeah, Strix. Empusa was a shape-shifting demon who would seduce men and trained their life force. So again, same characteristics here. And like, what a bad bitch for that.
Baddie.
The story of Lamia is that she was believed, and I think I said that wrong, so I apologize for that. I had these like somewhere, and I can't figure out where my pronunciation things were. I have more later. Was believed to have been a beautiful queen who was cursed by Hera, of course, who was forced to then devour her own children and then became a child-eating monster who drank blood. And the Strix were bird-like creatures who were thought to have feasted on blood and flesh, particularly of children. I like stopped myself when I was doing this for a second. I was like, are we sure that these were like real legends and not just stories to like scare kids into like acting right?
Honestly, that's what
Because
my thought went to, like being like, hey,
why
watch
are they
out
all
otherwise.
about children? Why are they all about children?
Yeah. They have
Definitely
to be
just
like
trying to like scare them straight, you know?
definitely.
Scare straight reference for those of you that got it. This is the ancient way of scared straight. They would tell you of demons that were going to come get you. Ancient India had the Pisaka. The Pisaka were flesh eating demons who could control minds and feed on energy or blood. Kind of sounds like zombie esque almost, like you know what I
Yeah.
mean, mixed with like a vampire of sorts.
Mm.
Ancient China had the Jiangxi. I swear I'm pretty sure I said that wrong. I'm so sorry. They were, I won't say it again, I promise, because it's going to be really bad if I do. They were stiff, reanimated corpses that drained chi, life force, if you know what that is, from their victims. Chi is very, very big in Chinese culture. It's essentially like what like drives you. So it's like what we would call almost like a soul or something like that, but a little different. They roughly translate to the hopping vampire, as they were said to move in like a hopping motion due to rigor mortis, which is crazy. You could defeat them with talismans, mirrors, or a rooster crowing.
What?
Interesting. A
So you
rooster
just have to
crowing.
keep roosters at your house
Yeah,
to make sure
apparently.
that they don't come. I'm
Yeah,
also just picturing like
I know.
a
Yeah.
dead person hopping, like
Yep.
just hop,
Yep.
hop,
Yep.
like a
But I'm
frog.
like, are they hopping? Yeah, exactly, like a frog. Are they hopping on all fours, or are they
Oh
hopping like a
God.
bunny on their 2 feet, like a kangaroo or something? I'm confused. Which one is it? I don't know.
Because if it's all fours, that's legitimately terrifying, and I'm gonna have nightmares about
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you said, frog, and now I'm like, that's all I'm picturing is them like hopping, like they're like a frog. Oh my god. But the closest in legends to what we now think of when we hear the word vampire comes out of Eastern Europe. The word vampire itself is said to stem from Serbian word vampire. It can be spelled with either an IR or YR, and vampire is also spelled IRE or YRE. So we have both spellings here. Even the word Nosferatu, which became wildly popular in Germany in 1922 from the horror film, and we just recently got a new one, which I have not seen yet, is said to have maybe been a word Nesferit, which means plague carrier, unbearable. The thought was that this word was overheard incorrectly and became Nosferatu. And when you think about a vampire and the phrase plague carrier or unbearable, that's kind of almost anonymous, especially in the way that vampires are actually portrayed in real legends and myths. Romania has legends that talk of the Strigoi and Moroi. And if you were a Vampire Academy fan, those words are very, very familiar to you. But it's not hot vampires and love stories or good vampires versus bad. It's the ugly undead. In real Romanian folklore, Strigoi is either a living person with supernatural abilities, often cursed or born under unusual circumstances. For example, the example that I saw was like being the seventh child of the same sex. So like all kids are girls or all kids are boy, and that last kid is cursed and as a vampire. Or they're a reanimated corpse that rises from the grave to drain the life of blood from the living. Their traits were typically they rise from the graves at night, drink blood, or steal life energy. They can shapeshift, often into animals like cats or wolves, bats. Many return to torment or seduce family members. They cause plagues, nightmares, and emotional distress. The way to stop a strigoi was to drive a stake through the heart with either ash or iron and decapitate the corpse and burn it, or sprinkle poppy seeds or salt on the grave, which forces the strigoi to count them.
Surprise,
So
here's a bunch of
salt
salt.
is not a crazy one when you think about it,
Yeah.
because it's used in a lot of like pagan and different like cultures for like protection against like essentially demons and bad energy. So that one wasn't like far-fetched for me. It's the fact that they're saying that it was so that they could count it.
Surprise, now you gotta count and you're gonna lose count.
Crazy. Exorcisms and reburials were also really common. And we're going to talk a little bit more about like these, ways that they were to stop Istrigoi a little bit more soon. The Moroi are closely related to the Strigoi, but they are subtly and creepily different a little bit. Sometimes described as living vampires, often weaker than Strigoi. In some regions, their souls are of unbaptized children or spirits of the dead that didn't find peace. They can drain energy or psychic life force rather than physical blood, sometimes associated with dreams and sleep paralysis. So, your sleep paralysis nightmare, like demon, could be a Moroi. They cause nightmares and nocturnal suffocation. In some traditions, a Moroi may be the child of two Strigoi or can be born living but die early and remain cursed with the vampiric tendencies. So very different, but what kind of like I can't remember her name right now, the author of the Vampire Academy, Rachel Mead, kind of stuck with the same, well, not same lore, but similar lore of the Moroi being born, because in the show or and the books too, the Moroi are born vampires and the Strigoi are turned vampires. So kind of stuck with it a little bit. Basically, vampires were just grotesque, often bloated, with blood at the mouth, and smelled of decay. That's the lore of them. Real lore of them. Vampires were rising from the grave, especially if the person died violently by suicide or was buried improperly, drinking blood from livestock and people, spreading disease or misfortune among their family or village, and they typically came back to torment like the people closest to them, is what was believed, like their family, friends, former lovers, and they could shapeshift into wolves, bats, or even mist in some folklore.
Can you just like hold on? Former lovers. Just imagine your ex comes back to you
As a
as a
vampire.
soul sucking, decay looking corpse. That is terrifying. Also, gonna have nightmares about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So villagers took vampire threats very seriously. There were specific rituals for preventing the dead from rising, such as like burying the body face down so it would dig deeper into the earth, like when it would like try to rise again, instead of it like coming up or like flipping itself around. It was thought to just be like that they would just go deeper into the earth. They would place heavy stones or sickles across the body so that it couldn't get up. Putting poppy seeds or rice in the coffin, again, the being compelled to count them thing. And piercing the corpse's chest with a wooden stake, often made of ash, hawthorn, or oak. So this was believed to like essentially kill them again. They would also dig up the corpses that were suspected of vampirism, to like look for signs. Like one of the signs was like fresh blood at the lips or undecomposed bodies. And then they would stake, decapitate, or burn the body to kind of like kill the vampire permanently. So if if a person was buried and they were thought to have had, some kind of vampiric vampire like tendencies or whatever it is that they were looking for, when that person would die, they would then re-exhume the body and like check it to see what like decomp looked like, and then if it wasn't to like what they thought it should be, then they would like essentially mutilate that body again and then put it back and rebury it, because then they would think like that was dead. There's also like I can't remember exactly where, but I know that throughout Eastern Europe there's old cemeteries where you can see like cages above like graves, essentially, because it was thought to like stop them from being able to like come out of the grave if they like were going to rise again, if they were suspected of being a vampire.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and sometimes even animals like dogs or horses were used to detect vampire graves. If they acted strangely near a grave, that was seen as proof. Not because of maybe it was just spooky for them or like ghost, because like if animals have like, if you believe in ghosts, then you
Yeah.
know that like animals tend to have reactions to the spiritual realm. There tend to be like more of a connection that they're supposed to be able to like see more. So
Mm-hmm.
like maybe that's what they're seeing, or like something else is just like been like maybe like a small animal,
Yeah,
like a
just like a
rat or something
rodent.
went by, yeah, like, or like a bug or a big bug or a snake or whatever, something like went by and scared them, spooked them. But no, it was vampire. Between the late 1600s and mid 1700s, Eastern Europe experienced what would be called like real vampire panics, in places like Serbia, or modern day Serbia, Hungary, and Romania. So like those were like some of the big places. I know we also talk about like Transylvania a lot. Those are just some of like the big places. There's actually a couple cases that are really famous for like being like vampires. So there's this guy, his name was, I'm gonna butcher his name, I'm so sorry, Peter Pelagowicz. I think that's how you say it. I'm gonna go with that was right.
That was beautiful. I
Those
would
my
not have said
That was
that.
my Polish coming out of me, maybe. I don't know. It's probably not wrong, but it's probably not right, but it's okay. That's what we're gonna go with. He was Serbian, around circa 1725. Villagers claimed that he returned after death and killed 9 people. His body was exhumed and they found fresh blood on his lips. His body was taken from the grave, staked, burned, and then put back and reburied.
Oh,
Yeah. And then there was another man in Serbia a year later, 1726, Arnold Paloi? Palo? That one I don't know. I'm sorry. A former soldier said to have been bitten by a vampire. After his death, people reported attacks leading to his body being exhumed and staked as well.
I
And
literally just
put back.
got chills so bad.
Yeah.
The fact that he was a former soldier and got bit. I
Yeah. Who knows? Well, there's also, and I'll talk about it in a minute. We're getting there. But these cases were so widespread that Austrian officials were forced to investigate, write reports, and sometimes prove the anti-vampire rituals. Like these state documents helped spread like the legend to Western Europe. So like people truly believed that like this was happening. I also talk about another case. Where is it? I think I put it in the wrong spot, but we'll get to it when we'll get there. Um, but we can't do an episode about vampires though and not talk about the amazing lore that comes out of none other than New Orleans, Louisiana. And I think I
going to
might
Nola, baby.
do, oh, I talk a bit about it in this, but I think I might do like a whole separate episode just about like New Orleans, maybe like just their lore in general and all of the great stuff that we get out of there, because it's a wild place when it comes to like the mystical, magical, like, cryptids. Like it's a great place for it. It's crazy. You have But I guess the answer, the real question is like, why? Why is this such a good place? And it's because New Orleans was a melting pot for of superstitions. You have the French colonialism, which brought European vampire myths with it. Then you have the African enslaved peoples who brought spiritual traditions. One of the most common, most famous is voodoo. And then you have the Creole peoples who blended it all together with their own beliefs as well. The architecture, the cemeteries, and above ground tombs, they evoke an eternal, otherworldly feeling like none other. It's a decadent culture of indulgence, secrecy, and shadowy beauty that is just perfect for vampire territory. And we have some urban legends out of this. According to one urban legend, two mysterious aristocrats, Jacques and Jean Lafayette, arrived in New Orleans in the early 18th century from France. Some say they were never seen in the daytime, that they had strangely ageless faces and would disappear for years and suddenly reappear unchanged. Locals believed that they were European vampires fleeing persecution, possibly even tied to the royalty of the court of Versailles. The truth? Still debated, but their legends persist in the French Quarter. Another one is that one of the most chilling and iconic vampire stories in Louisiana involves the Casca Girls. And yes, we are gonna do something about the Casca Girls because there's so much more than what I'm just about to talk about. In the 1700s, a couple of young French women arrived in New Orleans to marry settlers. They brought with them small, coffin like trunks called cassettes. Cassettes, I think is how you say it. Locals began to suspect the girls were not quite human, especially after people started dying mysteriously around them. At the old Ursuline convent, it's said that the girls were kept indoors, the windows boarded shut, and rumors claimed their caskets contained vampires or that the girls were vampires themselves. To this day, some believe that the convent is haunted and that the attic was sealed with blessed nails to keep something in, not out. Was it the girls or is it something else? We're gonna do a whole episode about that because that is it's a crazy legend and I absolutely love it. There's way more to that.
Yes, please, please, Nicole. Yes,
Yes, I
I'll
would
write that down.
don't. This is probably gonna be like a first part in like a whole bunch of vampire. Don't worry, guys. I will not let go of my obsession. You will get more vampire content. I promise. But
Yes.
to burst our bubble a little bit about these mythical, immortal creatures, the folklore of vampires is obviously based on something, right? There's always some kind of truth to legends and myths and all of that. While there are a few explanations for why people think these undead creatures existed and why it caused such a panic in Eastern Europe, one of the biggest explanations that I could find, and probably the most basic, is that people during this time were just seriously misinformed and uneducated on many fronts, but including illnesses and decomposition. One of the illnesses thought to have practically laid the groundwork for the characteristics of vampires was a blood disorder known as porphyria. Now, we're going to get a little medical for a minute, so stick with me. I'm not a medical professional in any regard, but this is what I was able to find in it, and I shortened it as much as possible. Short for me because we all know I like to yap, so just stick with me. Porphyria is a bit of a broader term for several rare diseases under this term. So it's like porphyria, whatever, um, which your body does not produce enough heme. So it's the crucial component of hemoglobin. It's essential for producing red blood cells. So like that is what your body needs to help you produce red blood cells. And if you have porphyria, that's not happening. Well, it's happening. It's just not happening enough. And it's generally classified by what part of the body porphyria is affecting. So this is how it breaks down. If it's affecting the skin, there's three different types: PCT, EPP, and CEP. PCT is porphyria cutanea tarda, which looks like it's the most common. It can cause skin blistering, fragility of the skin, and even scarring upon sun exposure. EPP, or oh god, sorry, I forgot how to say this one. Erythropoetic proto oh, sorry, protoporphyria. There we go. Sorry, my terminology is not always great. Causes burning, stinging, and or itching of the skin when exposed to sunlight without severe blistering. So that's not as bad. Still bad, not as bad. And CEP, or congenital erythropoietic porphyria, is a rare form that causes severe skin fragility and blistering along with other skin issues. So that's like the most severe out of the skin kind. If it's affecting the nervous system, it's AIP. AIP is acute intermittent porphyria, which has severe symptoms that can kind of come as go acute, as like episodes of like abdominal pain, vomiting, constipation, muscle weakness, and mental changes. If it's affecting both, it's called VP, or variegate porphyria, which can have symptoms from both the skin and nervous system ends of the disease. So that's kind of like both symptoms combined of effect of skin and nervous system. So it essentially attacks both. It's typically genetic, but it can be contributed by some outside factors like smoking, alcohol, liver disease, too much iron in the body, and typically is PCT that is caused by these outside factors. So the first one, porphyria cutanea tarda, which is the most common, that's the one that can be caused by these outside factors. And when you think about it, when you think about the times, like, and how like unsanitary this time was, people are smoking, they're drinking copious amounts of alcohol. Like, there's probably liver disease everywhere because of the copious amounts of drinking and alcohol, or smoking and alcohol. So, I mean, and then like too much iron in the body. I mean, you just there's so many factors here. But why did this disease lead to the myth of vampires? I mean, those symptoms, that in of itself, kind of speak for it. But besides that, the sensitivity, besides the sensitivity to the sun causing potential like disfigurement, it could also lead to your gums receding, which make your teeth look like fangs because of how much is exposed. And the whole like garlic aversion thing with vampires, that's because sulfur in the garlic would lead with people with porphyria to have acute pain. So like the sulfur that's in garlic, which like is fine for a normal person, if you have porphyria, it actually would cause like stomach issues for these people.
Wow.
No, the whole no reflection in the mirror thing was basically based on patients just not wanting to look at themselves in the mirror because the disease would destroy their facial tissue and collapse the facial structure. So they just would avoid mirrors.
Oh my god.
So no reflection when you're not looking at it. And if you guys know anything about like this time period, they also very strongly would believe when a person would pass, they would like cover mirrors that were around because they didn't want your soul to get like stuck. So like mirrors were a huge thing in superstitions back then. Then you also had none other than tuberculosis, TB, which if you ask Hank Green, if you know who that is,
I love
is
Hank.
me too. I love both of them so much. It is the root to basically all evil. He literally has a whole book about it and like a whole like podcast. Like he does not stop talking about tuberculosis, but like it is like the root of like a lot of problems. There's actually a case out of, this is where I was talking about before. This is, we're going to loop back to this. This is where I couldn't remember where I put this. There's a case out of Rhode Island from the 1800s of a woman named Mercy Brown who was accused of being a vampire. And I know what you're thinking. A vampire, not a witch, in the 1800s in New
Insane.
England? Wow. But nonetheless, this is, especially when it comes to TB, because we all know that TB was a big thing with witchcraft, or with witches back then. Most of her family had died from TB, and her father, George, used her as the scapegoat to blame the death of her family members as like an explanation to their community. So basically, Mercy died, And like I'm pretty sure she died of TB. She gave her family TB, and because she was the first one to die, they her dad blamed the rest of the family members' deaths on her, saying that she was a vampire and that like this is why the rest of the family was dying, like to the community as why, which is so crazy because when you think about it, it's like that was very common. So this was like a very common thing, like that one person would get sick with something and then the rest of the family would, and they would die, and then they would blame that person. And this is where like the panic would come in of like them coming back. And that was why vampires was attributed to like attacking your own family. It was because when that person would get sick and their misunderstanding of illnesses and how illnesses spread, you know, it's going to attack your family, obviously, because that's who you live with. But after Mercy had died and all her family members had died, they had exhumed her body, and her body didn't display severe signs of decomposition like they thought it would. So she was declared a vampire, and that she was making her family sick from the grave, obviously. So this part is going to be a little rough, and I'm sorry, but they cut out her heart, burned it. This is where it gets bad, and then proceeded to feed the ashes to her sick brother, who then, of course, died shortly after that.
Uh, uh,
You heard that right. Sick. It's sick.
that's disgusting. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Let you sit with that for a minute because, yeah, that was. I was not prepared to read that. I'm
What?
sorry, you guys had to hear that, but of course, we gotta talk about it. That was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
What they didn't, or I guess couldn't understand or take into account at this time was that Mercy's body, after she died, was being held in an above ground vault in the middle of a New England winter. So that slowed down the decomposition process.
But she's still like decomposing. Like that's the thing. Like at this cellular level, she's
Yeah.
still decomposing, and you
So
just fed
there
that.
obviously at this time was just a wild misunderstanding of how decomposition works. So like they had their ideas right of how it works. Like they, because obviously they're watching it, they're exhuming bodies. They're you just also they were like having funerals like in their homes at this point in time. So like you're just having a body sit around in your house. So like they have some idea of how it works, right? But what they don't understand, like the education was just not there. What they didn't understand was that there's so many different factors that like come into play that can like play with the decomposition time. And because they didn't understand that, it just like downright scared them essentially. So if their body wasn't decomposing the way they thought that it was supposed to be, they would just suspect that you were a vampire or something and unbury you to check. Like if you, so like in Mercy's case, she got sick. She got her family member sick. She died. Her family members died, and they suspected her of being a vampire because of TB, and because of like you spit up blood when you have TB. Like it can get really bad. And so they suspected her being a vampire, and then they kept her body in a place that like was not gonna, if you know anything about decomposition, you know that climate has a lot to do with the effects. So there's like some of the, like there's so many factors, but some of I would say like probably the three biggest factors, at least to me, are that sorry, I can hear the baby, she just woke up. um you can hear, or you can, I'm sorry, the three biggest factors to me are like cold weather, hot weather, and water. Those are some, to me, probably the three biggest factors to either slowing down or speeding up or just completely wrecking the decomposition process. Because like if the body is in water for too long, it becomes bloated. There's so many different things. And then obviously cold weather, freezing, slows down that process significantly. That's why morgues, you have the bodies in like these cold chambers essentially,
Mhm.
because it helps them to be able to do, what they need to do. And then hot weather significantly speed, not always significantly speeds it, but it does speed it up. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So they just didn't understand. And then you have cases of people just essentially being buried alive because the lack of understanding that, like, of somebody who might be ill or honestly even just drunk enough to like appear like to be in essentially a coma and appear to not be breathing because the breath is so shallow. They would think that the person was dead, and by the time some of these people would come out of it, they were already buried. So like they were buried alive, or like they'd be like waking up like on the table or whatever it was that they were, wherever they were, and it would be like this crazy thing. So they would either be considered a miracle or a demon, depending upon the circumstances.
Thank God I didn't live during that time. That's all I'm
Right?
gonna say. Because I would be so afraid that I would drink myself into a coma and then wake up buried alive. And then guess what? You're gonna
Yeah.
die there.
Like any, not even just that, but like thing like sickness. Like you fall so
Sickness.
ill that, like, again, TB, or like one of
Mhm.
those, that like your breathing is just so shallow, and you're asleep because your body can't do anything else because there's nothing that they can give you. Medicine is obviously not advanced at this point, and I mean we know that. And they're giving them like arsenic at this point, basically, for like medicine, and cocaine, like crazy, you know what I mean? So
Crazy,
like, yeah,
crazy
crazy
things. Yeah.
stuff, like for medicinal purposes that like obviously did not work. And your body's in this like such a state that your breathing is so shallow, and they think you're dead because they can't actually feel your pulse or anything, and they can't tell that you're breathing. It's, yeah.
Ugh.
Now, despite the reality of what caused this vampire panic, it didn't stop the legends from being made, and those legends turning into a genre in fiction and like fictional literature that has just gone from scary to heartthrob throughout time. The Vampire, spelled Vampyre, by John Polidori, was written in 1819 and is considered to be the first modern vampire story. It introduced the idea of the vampire as a charming aristocrat rather than a decaying corpse. The vampire lord Ruthven is seductive, wealthy, and deadly. It's based partly on the poet Lord Byron, who I know nothing about, but that's what they said. That's what it's based off of. This story shaped the vampire seductress archetype. So this is like the beginning of that. The definite most famous vampire in literature is none other than Bram Stoker's Dracula. And we might actually do something on this. Again, here's my vampire, obsession coming into play here, because we all know that Dracula is supposed to be based off of Vlad the Impaler. There is a little bit of controversy to that. Some like Bram Stoker, like historians, pretty much basically said that like they don't think that's true, but the similarities between Dracula and Vlad the Impaler are just too similar for it to not feel like they were. So this book, though, solidified vampires in fiction and is basically the blueprint of every vampire story that has followed. Count Dracula is a mix of old world superstition, Eastern European mystery, and aristocratic horror. It introduced ideas like vampires turning into bats, the fear of immigrants, invaders corrupting Victorian England, and even erotic undertones like blood as both life force and desire. Dracula was less about romance and more about power, predation, and cultural anxieties, especially around sexuality, women's liberation, and the clash between science and superstition. It's everything. Like, it is
Mhm.
everything in our literature that is now based off of. There's some way you can relate it back to that. Also, out of the 1800s, in 1872 came a very surprising story for the time of a female vampire who fell in love kind of ish, with a human woman. It's a book called, I mentioned it earlier in the beginning, Carmela by Sheridan LeFanu. It introduced themes of sensuality, queerness, and psychological horror because she's a vampire who becomes obsessed with this human woman, and it basically expresses this to that woman. This book was eons ahead of its time. I've never read it, but I actually would really like to. It was eons ahead of its time in exploring same-sex love in a time that was wildly homophobic, and is honestly just as important for representation now as it was then, and honestly probably even more important right now.
Like, truly, I haven't even heard of that book,
Yeah,
and now I'm like, I gotta read it. I
yeah,
gotta read it. That is
yeah,
insane. In
yeah, yeah.
1872?
I was very surprised. So I have heard of Carmela before, but I didn't realize what it was really about. Excuse me. Nor did I realize that it came out of that time. I have heard little things about it before, but it's so important that this is like something that and it also is a big proponent into like shaping that, yeah, again, like that sexuality and sensuality of vampires mixed with that like horror. It's still, there's still the villain, but it's teetering into, what we
Mm-hmm.
almost have. But the 20th century is where we see a real shift in vampires being portrayed as villains to tragic anti-heroes. So this is where we really see that big shift. The biggest book out of this time was in 1976, Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. She is
Mm,
She reinvented the vampire as this
she did.
brooding, beautiful being burdened by immortality. Anne Rice gave us themes such as immortality as suffering, homoeroticism, faith versus damnation, and the pain of human connection. She is the pioneer of emo vampire aesthetic, and
She
is synonymous with vampire culture in New Orleans because she's from New Orleans. Like, Anne Rice is like I said, she's literally the pioneer of emo vampire aesthetic. Like, we would not have like Twilight or the brooding Salvatore brothers now if it wasn't for her. It just wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne, for doing the good work.
Right? Yes. And again, like this, we also get like, homosexuality in that as well. And I think that's just, again, from the 70s, which, were a time that was a little bit more open. That's just where you have the hippie era. But I think that that's still something that was so important. And it's still important to this day. And there's
Mm-hmm.
shows now on there. There's movies, there's shows. There's so many about, this. And there's the newest show is probably the only one that I've actually seen, and it's really good. Lestat is, obviously our brooding but crazy, you know, and I would call him the antagonist, to be quite honest.
Oh, he is. He
And then
is.
you have Louis, who is just sad. I don't really know how else to put it. He's just sad.
I'm gonna rewatch that now.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. It's so great. Not to be outdone, though, also that came out of this time period was 1975's Stephen King's Salem's Lot. I don't have a lot to say on that. We all know how Stephen King is. He's amazing. He gives us great, great horror. But it's just, I mean, out of this time when you compare the two, in my opinion at least, I'm sure there's people out there that probably feel that Stephen King's Salem's Lot is important or as important, whatever. And I just don't feel like it compares to what we got from Anne Rice.
I don't think so either.
But
Yeah.
it's still great. It's still great.
Yeah. It's still a great book.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
Stephen King in himself is a whole other,
Yes.
I don't want to say,
Yes.
I was going to say beast, but like he's a legend in his own right. He's a go,
Yes.
like he has his thing, and we got a lot of great things from him.
Mhm.
Now fast forward again to the 2000s, and there's basically just an explosion of brooding vampires. This is where we get just a plethora of vampire content, from books to shows to movies. There's, like we all mentioned before, there's Buffy, True Blood, which was actually originally called The Southern Vampires Mysteries by Charlene Harris. That's the original book series that the True Blood is based off of.
Okay.
Vampire Academy, Twilight, Vampire Diaries, the originals. There's also A Discovery of Witches, which is more recent, which,
Mm-hmm.
yes, is about witches, but the love interest is, of course, a seriously old aristocratic vampire. They're always seriously old.
They're always old.
I
Old
don't
as dirt.
understand, but you know what it is. I live for it, so it's fine. He's from a practically ancient line. Like he is like his family is like the original, like one of the original lines of vampires. And again, that's another series where it's like born versus turn, whole thing. Um, but if you're a book girly or guy, there's an ever infamous YA series called The House of Night, which I still think should not be labeled YA, but what do I know?
It definitely should not be YA.
I have a couple of the books up there. I only have a couple because I read most of them on my, well, I didn't have Kindle at the time. My Nook, I had Nook at the time. I read most of them on there. I never read all of them because at some point, I think it was like book 8, I was just like, this is getting ridiculous. And I
This is
stopped reading
so
it. I made it a
spicy.
mission that I really want to like read them again soon. So that's on my list of things to do. But if you guys know anything about those books, you know what I'm talking about. I think I was
Yes.
like 13 when I started reading them, and I definitely 13,
Uh-uh.
14 maybe when I started reading them, and I definitely should not have been. And but
No.
you know, see, I read what my sister would read, and my sister read
Right.
mostly books that like were pretty age appropriate for me. This book she read and she's like, this is really good, you like this is during our vampire obsession time. You know, we had Twilight that I would just reread over and over and over and over again. I have a really funny story about Twilight actually that I can't believe I didn't mention in the beginning of this. It's so funny because it just came to me. So I would read the books, right? Read the books, watched all the movies. When I would reread the books, and these are also the only book series I think to date that I have read multiple times, like multiple
Wow.
times, through and through again and again. But like I said, when I was younger, I was a Jacob girly, obviously. I was Team Jacob. So what I would do is I would read the first book, I would read New Moon, I would get to the part in New Moon where Alice would come back and tell her that they had to go get Edward, and they would leave to go get Edward, and I would close the book, put it down, and then I would pick up Eclipse and I would start reading Eclipse instead because I would get so mad about Edward coming. Once he was back in Eclipse, I was fine. But it was
Yeah.
him coming back that always made me really mad because I didn't want him to come back. I wanted her to like be with Jacob. So I
Yeah.
would get really mad. I would close the book, I would put it down, and then I would pick up Eclipse and I would start reading that one instead. It
You're like, this
was
doesn't exist to me. She
no, it
doesn't
didn't
go back
exist.
to
I
Moon.
cannot tell you how many times I read that entire series, and I would do it after like the first like two or three times that I read it. I would do it every single time. I would close the book, put it away, and just open the next one and start reading the next one because I just didn't want him to come back. But then once he was back in Eclipse, everything was fine again. So funny. I can't believe I forgot to mention that earlier. Even now as an adult, there are so many options of adult spicy vampire books and even just non-spicy books. Like there's just so many, you know, books about it. It's just a whole like subgenre of a subgenre in fiction. It's crazy. But it also didn't stop people in real life from believing that they themselves are vampires. All around the world, there are people who truly believe that they are vampires. Some in the more traditional sense, where they actually drink blood consensually, and some who are considered energy vampires, where they feed off of people's energy. I don't know if you ever saw it or if anybody remembers True Life from MTV, but I have a very distinct, this is like a pivotal moment for me. This is like a core memory. I have a very distinct memory of a True Life episode called True Life I'm a Vampire. It was probably one of the cringiest things. They talked about vampire, like energy vampires a lot in that. Like, there's literally a scene that sticks out in my mind of this woman at work who said that she was an energy vampire. She would literally stand over her coworkers, like hovering her hands or something, and like take their energy from them to like help herself. Yeah.
Oh wait, there's like a clip on YouTube
Yeah.
of like the episode, and it's like
Yeah.
5 minutes. Okay, I'll watch that after this.
Yeah. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. It was I'm telling you, this was like this is what this came out like I think during like the whole Twilight craze, and
Yeah.
I this is like a pivotal moment for me in my life. Like, I remember this so clearly, and it did not help my obsession with vampires at all.
It made it
Like,
worse.
it was definitely super cringy, and I was just like, I don't understand. Like, there's literally like there's also another scene that I kind of remember of like a clan or something, and like the way that it was just, it felt like almost like LARPing, but like they truly believed it, and I just like couldn't. I don't know, I just couldn't. But it was so it was part of my content. Like, I didn't care what kind of content I was getting, I was just getting vampire
You're like, I
content.
need vampires.
Yeah, if
I'll
you
take
can
these
tell, I
cringy
was
LARPers.
obviously like, it's a problem. It's a problem. This is just bringing my obsession back in, but it's okay. I even just as recently saw TikToks of people saying, so my sister and I will send crazy TikToks and like videos back and forth, reels, whatever, back and forth to each other. We were just recently I got to find them and send them to you, because these people were like claiming that they were vampires. And the woman she was saying that like he turned her, but she was also claiming that she was a werewolf. And which, if you guys are interested, I can also probably do something about that as like a cryptid.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
That would
But
be fun.
she's claiming that she's a werewolf, and then people in the comments were like, and you know how TikTok is, people in the comments are, crazy, and they're like, you said you were a werewolf, now you're saying you're a vampire, like what it, like trying to like get her. She was like, no, he turned me, and my like, and they like saying that they like drink blood and all of this stuff. And I was like, oh my god, it's crazy. I was like, I can't believe I'm getting this content now, like this is crazy.
Like, this is wild.
I love every second of it. It's so great. There are even 2 cases, though, like serious cases, that I might cover. There's one that I definitely want to cover. The other one I'm not as sure about. Of people who said vampires essentially made them kill other people. One is the vampire of Sacramento. His name is Richard Chase, who back in the 70s killed 6 people in 1 month because he believed he needed to consume people's blood and organs to stop his blood from turning to powder. Now, he was diagnosed schizophrenic, so that is why, but he believed that this is what he needed to do, that his blood was going to turn to powder, and the only way to stop it was to drink people's blood and eat their organs. Then there's Rod Ferrell. This was the one that I think I definitely want to cover. It's called the Vampire Clan Killer. He was a self-proclaimed vampire and leader of a blood-drinking cult known as the Vampire Clan, who killed his girlfriend's parents when he tried to help her run away from home. So I'm not going to talk more about it now. Yeah, but I definitely want to cover that one. It's a very interesting case. Very creepy. It's a lot, but it's very, very sad. But yeah, so I think I want to cover that one. Even though we know the truth behind these myths and legends of vampires, why the obsession? Is it the immortality or the forbidden desire? Is it the allure of something ancient, powerful, just a little bit dangerous? Or maybe it's because in some way vampires reflect us, our hunger, our secrets, the fear of death, and the desperate wish to outrun it. No, it's totally the immortality and the thought of a drop dead, gorgeous, powerful being choosing us, because that's what it is for me.
That's what I think it is too.
But from creepy crypts to teenage vampire love, vampires will keep evolving with us. After all of this, though, I asked in the beginning what you think of when you hear vampires, but let me ask this before we end. Do you think vampires could be real? If legends and myths are always based on some semblance of truth, and we know all the things that we know now, all the issues with health, illnesses, decomposition, all of that, do you think it was just based off of being uneducated, or do you think there could be some kind of truth to the legends? That there was possibly something real it was based off of, or is it just another cryptid? You tell me.
Nicole, I, for one, think vampires are real. Not in the typical like sense,
Yeah.
but I don't know. New Orleans.
Uh,
I don't know.
we're
We
gonna
need
do
to
a
get
whole thing
into it.
about
We gotta do
Orleans. We're
that.
gonna
We
do a whole
got
thing about New
to.
Orleans because I could talk about all of the stuff that comes out of there for literally ever.
Yeah.
I am also, you guys will very quickly find out, I'm a very big cryptid believer. So, like,
Yes.
obviously, all of these legends come from somewhere, right? Which we've talked about time and time again throughout this episode. But I am a firm believer that they all also, especially when you go back to ancient times, and obviously, a lot of this stuff comes from misinformation, mishearing. People can't see because they didn't have glasses back then. Hello, I'm blind as hell. I would probably think something was not what it actually was too. I do, and I still wear glasses. But there's all these factors, but I still think like big thing. I'm just gonna throw this in here. I know this is a lot to throw in at the end, but like dragons, okay? Like they are a big thing in ancient times. Like what they obviously came, this is a hugely widely debated, and I know people are going to be like, oh my gosh, you're talking about this right now, but like they obviously came from somewhere, and I think it's more than just misinformation and like uneducated, like being uneducated. I think, and in different varying factors, I think there are I feel personally that there's some validity to every cryptid story.
Amen, sister. I agree with you.
Well, whether it's crime, conspiracy, or just straight up spooky, we're going to keep talking about it. Like, follow, comment, and stay tuned for new episodes each week because it'll just keep getting dark and spooky from here. So stay nosy and stay spooky, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys. Team Jacob.